Welcome back to this final section of the Student Hub Live Opening Up Classical Studies event. And in this session, we're going to talk about classical civilization in your school. So this session is specifically for teachers or anybody interested in introducing classics to schools, and we have an opportunity for a Q&A session. And I'm also going to be interviewing Arlene Holmes-Henderson, Stephen Dobson and Charlie Andrew, who are going to talk about various aspects of introducing classics in schools. So firstly, if I could ask you all about the benefits of studying classical civilization in schools. Charlie?
Well, I think the benefits for pupils in general are exactly the same as I experienced when I was at school. I got to study absolutely everything. I'm a bit of a butterfly, so I like a little bit of art, a little bit of history, a little bit of philosophy. And I was able to do all of that. And I love the fact that I can offer my students exactly the same. It appeals to everyone because there's something for everyone.
So the variety.
Yes.
Stephen, what about you?
I think that's absolutely right. I think that combination of so many different concepts being brought together and explored through a culture that's at sometimes so incredibly similar to our own and at other times incredibly different, and finding those points where the similarities stop and the differences begin, I think is really important. But also in terms of, I mean, just the politics of it, the fall of the Roman Republic, some of it seems so contemporary that I think that idea that humans and the way that they form their societies has been so similar throughout history has been quite a good way for students to explore the society that we live in now.
Arlene?
I think the opportunity to study civilizations in the round, like the ancient Greeks and the Romans, allows students to confer some skills which are cross-curricular and which can be applied to lots of aspects of contemporary life. And those skills which I think are particularly useful are literacy, critical literacy and critical thinking. And I think that's where ancient history and classical civilization are really useful.
Wonderful. So that's a lovely introduction. Now, you're all here representing different components. So, Stephen, I wonder if we can start with you. You're from Redbourne School with our lovely live audience here today. So can you tell us a little bit about, well, yourself initially, and also what led you to introduce classical studies and classical civilization to the school?
Of course. I started off as a science teacher. My degree was in mechanical engineering, and I started off as a physics teacher, and it was only through an outreach project that we were doing with our local middle schools, looking at maths and classics and combining the two as sort of a gifted and talented extension activity, that the idea took hold. And around about 7 or 8 years ago, a colleague and I started offering GCSE Latin. We were given the chance to. We started off with 6 students, and we're up into the 70s now, just about. We've just broken that magic barrier. And for all of the students, it's the first time that they've encountered it. So we're teaching them from scratch and running them right the way through to the end of the GCSE. And then at A-level, 4 years ago, so we've got the 3rd and 4th cohorts behind the lights at the moment. And this is the opportunity to study classical civilization. So in translation, the world of the Greeks and the Romans, right the way through from Homer, however many 100 years you want to place in BC, right the way through to the writings of Virgil and into that 1st century AD pretty much. And that whole suite was something that always fascinated me. And I think that despite being a non-specialist, the support I've received from organisations like ACE has allowed me to fill in those gaps and be able to pass on that enthusiasm I have.
Wow. So what sort of impact then has it had in terms of adding something to the curriculum and also to your individual students?
I think one of the things at Redbourne which is a real positive is how fiercely proud of being a comprehensive school we are, and so we're providing courses which are appropriate for the full range of academic abilities. So we have a school farm, for instance, with and other parts within the school that have much more practical aspect, and BTECs and NVQs and some of the non or the less academic courses, right the way through to at the far end subjects which are considered to be almost elitist in their academia, so classics and Latin. And I think that full range is really important, and students being able to dip in and out of areas which are more academic and less academic, which are more practical and more theoretical, within their same timetable, I think is really important, and has an impact on those students. It gets them to look broader than they might otherwise do.
And you mentioned some of the support that you've had from ACE. What have some of the challenges been then?
I think having a small single class subject, particularly at A-level, there's always that issue around recruitment And so one has to be certain that there are going to be a sufficient number of students for the course to be viable to run. I mean, all state schools are under quite a lot of financial pressure at the moment, and you see these stories of courses being cut and even afternoons the school being closed on a Friday afternoon. So I think that is obviously an issue and something that has to be considered. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to be in a position where we're offering a course to students that weren't going to benefit from it. So I think everyone who's taken it so far has benefited in some way, either supporting their other subjects, or it's allowed them to find a topic or a study area which really inspires them. And then they go on to study at university, and several of students over the last few years have done just that, gone on and read classics or classical civilizations at universities up and down the land.
So how have you overcome that recruitment issue then?
I think probably by being excessively enthusiastic in
I was just
public
going to say, you're
about
very passionate
classics.
about
Yes, there are. Whenever you're trying to catch a student's eye, there are certain things which do work, and so we're very lucky that the school supports an overseas trip each year. So there's a GCSE trip one year and an A-level trip the other. And so, for instance, most of the students in the audience today were able to come to Greece a few weekends ago. And we went to Athens and Delphi and Epidaurus and Mycenaeus.
Milton Keynes.
And today we have topped that by coming to the land of roundabouts. And what could be better than that?
Well, indeed, indeed. OK, thank you. So, Charlie, you're here representing Classics for All.
Yes, so Classics for All is a charity that was set up in 2010 to revitalise the teaching of classics in the state sector. Unfortunately, over the previous few decades, it had taken a bit of a nosedive. And so consequently, a bunch of very dedicated classicists got together and said, well, what can we do to halt this decline? So we've spent the last 8 years exactly doing that, so trying to pull it out, analyse what we needed to do, raise funds and help state schools introduce classics, Latin and ancient Greek.
Now, you provide resources, don't you, for these schools? So what do you offer?
Well, the main thing we do is we help them through the process of setting up what classics they want, because every school is different. So you can't just go in with one solution. So we go in, we talk to schools, we get a feel for what the schools are like, what they would like to do, and then we take them down the process of creating a grant application, looking at getting the right people in to take them through the training. Sometimes there are teachers there who are very capable and know what they're doing and just run with it, but other times they really are going from scratch. So it's up to us to help them through that process, to advise them on what resources might be the best for them, how they might integrate into their curriculum, whether they should run as a club. So there are a whole range of possibilities for introducing classics, and we help them to explore all of those and then see them through to reality.
Wow. So you basically mentor, having seen a lot of things, and create something tailor-made that's going to work for that particular school with that particular population.
Yes, because all schools are different.
No, absolutely. And so what have you achieved then so far since you've started doing this?
My goodness, when you bring it down to numbers, it seems quite a lot. So 45,000 pupils across the UK in state schools have now been introduced to the wonders of classics, thanks to Classics for All. And it's, I think, around 750 schools. But the main thing is I think we can say hand on heart, we've stopped the decline, we're reversing the decline. And more importantly, I think, than that, and probably at the root of it, is making people who might not have believed this otherwise, that classics is a really useful way of servicing the modern curriculum, both at primary and at secondary. I think it's been seen or misconceived in the past as something for the elite, something that we should leave in the past, but actually it's got some really huge benefits for the modern curriculum. And across the curriculum, like Arlene said, it really pulls so many things together.
And I asked Stephen about impact, and I'd like to ask you the same thing as well. What impact has it had? Can you give us an example of one way in which things have made a real difference in a school?
Absolutely. So one of our sort of powerhouses at the moment is up in Blackpool Sixth Form College. They've introduced classical studies there, and they've had plenty of students go on to really prestigious universities to study it. But I think the effects can't just be measured like that. I think the feedback we've had from Blackpool is that their students feel a lot more confident, more aspirational. They have better communication skills. And the lovely thing about Blackpool is that now the teacher, Peter Wright, who's the spearhead of all the activities up there, is now spearheading more work in the primary sector. So we're looking at getting the kids when they're younger and super enthusiastic, so that they're all sort of genned up, ready to go for all the classical subjects once they reach Key Stage 3 and into GCSE and beyond.
Now, we asked everyone at home why study classics, and let's see what they had to say, because it really resonates with what you're talking about right now, Charlie. So we've got things like here, interesting, useful, study skills, analytic, broadening ideas, education, fun, unique, root of culture. So some really interesting things there. I mean, interesting being the sort of key word that's come out through all of that, which I think we can all agree it is. So Arlene, advocating classics education then, another project. What resources and support do you guys offer?
Well, our website, www.aceclassics.org.uk, offers a range of resources for people who are interested in finding out more about classical civilization and ancient history qualifications in schools. So our project acts as a campaign for raising the profile, currency and status of qualifications in classical civilization and ancient history. So we want to help people find out what the point of classical civilization and ancient history is. And so Professor Edith Hall, from whom we've heard twice already this afternoon, has a short video on the homepage of our website explaining in about 3 minutes why everyone in every school in the country should be studying classical civilization. Our website also includes a range of other videos from students who are currently studying classical civilization, both at Key Stage 3, so aged kind of 11 to 16, at GCSE, so Key Stage 4, and also some students who are studying at A-level, giving their experiences of what it's like to study classics at school, and also their suggestions on why that's a sensible choice to make in the 21st century. Our website also offers resources for teachers about how to get started. So there's a step-by-step guide on, okay, I'm convinced classical civilization is something we should be offering. What do I do next? That is freely accessible, including these are the key words I should be using with my senior leadership team to be compelling in my argument. The project also makes available some funding via our partnership with Classics for All. So as Charlie explained, Classics for All is a national charity which provides some funding for teachers in schools to access training. If they're not classics specialists, they can get some specialist training to learn about classical civilization and ancient history. Professor Hall and myself have an exciting opportunity coming up in July this year, where at King's College London for a week we are running a summer school for teachers who are not currently teaching classical civilization but would like to introduce that subject in their schools. This summer school is free, completely free of charge to teachers in schools, and it will be hosted in London for a week. Applications are currently open. They close on the 26th of April. Full information is available on our website.
Brilliant. So people can find out more about that, put in an application, and hopefully then be able to enjoy the event. So how might it work then? You've mentioned that you work in partnership then. If somebody's watching this, where might they go first, and how do the two organisations work together?
Funnily enough, we've just moved into pretty much the same office as each
other. Funnily enough.
So we just like shout at each other down the corridor. You can visit Arlene's website, ACE website. Classics for All also has a website. And we have a grants application process that sounds scary, but it isn't. It's literally one form. And again, we're there to help you through the whole process of applying for a grant. So that, I guess, would be the next step, if you were really interested, would be to get in contact with either or both of us.
So basically, just to sort of summarise, your area in terms of Classics for All is really trying to establish the way in which a school might progress things.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So that would be the strategy, the direction, what's right for the school, and then we're looking here at the resources and how to sort of embed things once that route has been established. So perhaps a little bit more further down the line, might it be?
And I guess we also provide the initial information. So available on our website for download are these leaflets. So this is a first step guide to qualifications in classical civilization. What are they about? What type of skills do they confer? Why are they a good thing? An equivalent leaflet for ancient history. So these leaflets are available in PDF form from our website. We also have hard copies available. So these are the types of resources which we make available to schools in the initial stages of trying to understand why these resources, why these qualifications are interesting and valuable for the 21st century curriculum. And Professor Hall and myself do a lot of school visits to enthuse young people about these subjects and also to make compelling arguments with school leaders to make space on the timetable for them.
Right. Now, Stephen, I wonder, having been through this process, what advice might you give to teachers out there who are thinking about approaching these two organisations? What advice might you give them in terms of how to go about things and working? It seems like things can be quite political and it's all about getting people on side and nurturing certain aspects of the school life.
I mean, I think you do have to have the support of your senior leadership team. No course is going to get introduced in the school unless you get approval from on high. But I don't think there's any reason why, with the support that's available, that case can't be made. And each of the teachers that I know who've really made a case for it and who've used the resources and who've had the visits, as we ourselves did, have been able to introduce it. Certainly at least given a trial period of a couple of years to see whether there's sufficient interest within that particular school population. But if you've got the enthusiasm and the interest for it, then I wouldn't recommend it highly enough. I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed and still thoroughly enjoy teaching physics, but without doubt, teaching classics is the best thing that's happened in my career. And the visit that Arlene mentioned a moment ago, a couple of years back, we had an evening sort of celebration of classics, and some of the videos of the sixth formers on the ACE website are previous, and I think a couple of current members of the Redbourne Classics department. Our students are on there making the case for it for all students to be involved, and I think that if, like I said at the beginning, if you are a teacher and you have an interest in doing so, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't. It might seem challenging to get started, but there's so much support out there, and willingly given, enthusiastically given. I mean, you've seen the enthusiasm of both the other guests here today, and it's almost that if you say you're interested, they'll come and take up residence in your school until you've got it established. So you're in. So go for it.
And you're clearly very enthusiastic and passionate about it, which shines through. But you mentioned how rewarding it is.
Enormously.
So what has been rewarding for you in terms of your teaching?
I think there are a couple of aspects to that. One is finding students respond in a way to the subject material that I respond myself. I think that idea of a shared enthusiasm, a shared passion for what on the face of it are quite obscure aspects of something that happened a very long time ago, I find that very exciting. But also the sorts of discussions that arise from studying something like a Greek tragedy, where there's this horrendous scene where someone is brutally murdered or they carry out some extreme act of self-violence, and looking at the reasoning behind that and trying to work out at what point does their behaviour stray away from what they think is okay, and trying to identify that specific point where something steps aside from how a response in today's society might happen and makes that difference. And really interrogating that, I think, is really valuable. And then there's the political side as well. There are multiple complaints over many years from newspaper editorials and so on that students aren't engaged in politics. But the classics course is inevitably political. I don't mean party political, but it's inevitably asking students to engage with issues of governance, of demagoguery, of the responsibility for all citizens to be engaged. And I don't think you can really ask for more of a subject than it poses those challenges for a student.
And so can I ask both of you then, is Stephen's opinion unique? Have you seen other people be rewarded in their own teaching for different reasons, perhaps, in terms of introducing classics in their schools?
Well, I'm actually still teaching at the moment, so the thing I love is when the student always brings it back to the modern and gives their own unique perspective on things. For example, teaching a room full of year 8s who all have smartphones in their pockets and who are all taking selfies about Narcissus is quite an interesting exploration, because they can see it in terms of their daily experience. And the way they just put a different layer on the interpretations that you might not see. So I like it when they respond how I see it, but also when they respond differently. And I really love those aha moments when they put 2 and 2 together through their classics learning. One I had recently was, we were talking about Caesar and crossing the Rubicon. And they actually said, "Oh, is that what crossing the Rubicon means?" Because they'd heard the phrase and they didn't realise that it actually referred to a historical event, or an apocryphal event. Yeah. And bam, it just all clicked into place for them.
Yeah, I mean, earlier we heard Cloud Cuckoo Land with the same association.
Yeah.
And of course, we're living in very interesting political and democratic times right now. Are students making some of those connections between some of the content from classical studies and the world around us right now?
Absolutely, we do a session again in year 8 on all of the ocracies and archies and ranking them. And I always try and get them to match up with a modern equivalent, and talking about the pluses and minuses of having certain forms of government, but not in terms of sort of how Plato or Aristotle would describe them, but today, what their personal response is to those kinds of modern forms of government. It always segues beautifully into the modern. Anything you do with classics, anything at all, it always drifts towards something very modern very quickly.
And Arlene, what have you seen in terms of teachers' experiences of being rewarded by introducing classical studies?
Well, as a national advocacy campaign, we've been working closely with teachers as part of other subject associations. So we've been working with colleagues in the Historical Association, the Schools History Project, the National Association of Teachers of RE, the Association for Citizenship Teaching, and it's been great to see teachers of other subjects engage in a small way with classical civilization and have those same aha moments. So the teachers of English go, aha, when they see the etymology from elements of the classical world, which are now used in English. The teachers of citizenship have aha moments when thinking about the way that states were organised and run, and rights and responsibilities from ancient Greece and Rome when compared to today. The historians have lots to say about source analysis and evaluation and how it's done with ancient history versus modern history. But what they all say is that their subject knowledge is enhanced and their teaching practice and their professional competency is enhanced for their original teaching subject because they've done even a little bit of classical civilization. So that's why we're hoping the summer school we're running at KCL in July this year is going to have a really positive impact on teachers, not just enabling them to teach classical civilization, but also helping them teach their own teaching subject even better.
It's a really, really good point. And I think, at the heart of people who teach is that, joy of passing knowledge on and seeing things grow. And sometimes having a variety can really make you apply things in other contexts as well to your perhaps main specialist subject area. Has it helped with your physics teaching?
Maybe not directly. But I think studying ideas, or studying the progression of ideas and the development of thought and understanding, I think is really important as well. And students sometimes come into the study of sciences believing that that's just how things are and what people have always thought. And anyone who's thought differently, how ludicrous could it have been? And so I've recently been teaching some of the development work recently on wave-particle duality. And while that's hardly covered in the classical syllabus in any way, shape or form, the idea that you might treat something from two completely contrasting viewpoints, both of which have something valid to say about a particular issue, neither of which giving the full story, I think is something which is perfectly possible to draw out, and inevitable to draw out really, in teaching classics as well. The idea of historical fact and mythological and historiography all being melded together to give you something like the Aeneid, I think it's very similar, that mindset and that openness to the development of ideas is really important, just for education broadly, regardless of topic area.
And I mean, criticality and those critical skills are so important in whatever you go into, especially in higher education as well. So not only is the content and the material really valid, but it's that the ability to construct an argument and think differently.
Yes.
And having those different disciplines can often add that.
Yes, the evaluative nature of any kind of extended response to the classical world, where you're looking at different sorts of evidence and ranking them accordingly, is something that's, I think, really important for any topic area that you might go into in the future.
Brilliant. Well, that has been a wonderful session. I hope you've enjoyed today's programme. We certainly have. So Arlene and Charlie, thank you so much. And thank you, Stephen. And thank you so much for bringing your wonderful class on yet another class trip. Yeah. It's been fantastic having you here today. It's also been fantastic having you at home and at school and in the office watching. HJ, is everybody happy? Any other questions we haven't yet covered? I know you've put all the links in the chat.
We're all happy. I think we've covered everything. And I just wanted to give a shout out to a couple of people. Clara's actually watching from a very cold Florida today, so very dedicated classic students from the OU. And Paul Found is just saying his year 13s are really enjoying the session. And he said, needless to say, not much work is getting done this afternoon, so that's okay. I'm sure we picked up something. But all the links are in the chat and on our website as well, studenthub.open.ac.uk. And if you have any questions or anything we didn't quite cover, just email us, studenthub@open.ac.uk, and we'll be happy to get back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's programme. It will be available on Catch Up if you've missed any of it, and later on our Student Hub Live YouTube channel, where you can find out a lot more about the Open University, study skills more generally, and there are some fantastic sessions from colleagues in classical studies that you can search for there also. So that's all from us today. Bye for now, and I hope to see you at another of our Student Hub Live events in the future. Thanks for watching.